Hey everybody, hope you're having an awesome Monday. I was thinking today about fear, and basically I'm in a group right now where, that was a major subject that we were talking about, and a lot of people do suffer from fears. Everybody does, actually, right? And we can say, okay, we fear death, we fear public speaking, we fear people telling us no, we fear rejection, we fear all of those things. But what I have kind of learned throughout various obstacles in my life, and also just studying health behavior and doing work on myself over the last, well, my whole life basically, is that we have two main fears. Okay, two main fears that we have that are at the core of us are the fear of being loved, not being loved, and the fear of not being enough. So, fear of not being loved is a basic human fear, and the fear of not being enough, I think, is the biggest one. The fear of not being enough really prevents us from going after what we want. And I've really learned that. And I've seen it. And once I've recognized it in myself, even, I just have decided that, okay, that's a fear, and that's sort of like a cognitive distortion. There's no evidence for it, false evidence appearing real. But to many people, just going up and talking to someone, like in my business, what I do is, I reach out to people. I talk to people on a daily basis, and I tell them what I do, and, I try to help them, and it's always from a place, from my heart. And it's never just about being selfish with me. I mean, it's more so I reach out because I know that I can help. And a lot of people that I bring on board with me, they have this paralyzing fear. They're afraid to talk to their friends and family, or even to build new friendships. They're afraid to step outside of their comfort zone. They're afraid. And we always hear, everything in life that you want is right outside, just outside your comfort zone. And we really do crave, as human beings, we crave two things. We crave comfort, but we also crave growth. We need both. But a lot of times we stay in comfort for a longer period of time because it feels better and it's safe. And anytime you're going to grow, you're going to go through a lot of pain. Think about anything in nature. When it grows, if it doesn't grow, it dies, right? If a flower doesn't grow, there's only one option for it. It's going to die. So it can never stay where it is. It grows from underground. It has to break through the dirt, the surface. It has to overcome all the adversity of the weather and conditions that it might be in, and then it blooms, right? So you have to kind of think of yourself as the same way. So anything that you're fearing, just understand that it ultimately comes back to a fear of you not being enough. And that comes from someplace, probably in childhood, where you can blame your parents for it. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe you could, but, for a little while, but at some point in time, you have to take responsibility for your own life, and you have to realize, okay, maybe I didn't have the best upbringing, or maybe I did have people who told me I wasn't enough, and maybe I never felt loved as a child, or maybe I never felt loved as an adult even. Maybe I've never had someone that I could really completely trust and feel like I could open up to on every level and really feel like they validated me as a person, right? So we tend to kind of like have all these barriers in place as a result of our fears. We're so afraid of being rejected because what does rejection mean? That we're not enough, that we're not loved, right? We have a fear of trying something new because we might fail, right? If we go and try and get that degree and we don't pass, even just taking a test, right? And we fail. I mean, I used to get actual knots going in, taking tests, in my stomach. Like, even though I would have studied for days and days and days, I would be confident in my understanding of the material, but I would still go in and have this major fear, right? Like that, what if I fail? And as you get older and you get out of school and all of these things, you realize, okay, was it really a big deal in the grand scheme of things? No. But at the time, it seems like a huge deal, right? And I just kind of think that we let that define us, because I always felt like if I failed, that I wasn't enough as a person. And I really had to work on that for a lot of years, and I still work on it, obviously. You feel like when you put yourself all into something, that if it doesn't work out, then that says something about you as a person, and you just don't want to feel those uncomfortable feelings. No one wants to feel the uncomfortable feelings, right? But you have to in order to learn. And if anything about being in business, an online business, has taught me over the years, is that I have to fail forward. I have to fail in order to succeed faster, right? Because that's the only way that you learn from your mistakes. You have to try different things and then find what works for you. And being an athlete even, I can tell you, was it scary the very first game that I ever pitched, when I was 12 years old, and I went out there and I think I walked, I remember, of course, every single game I ever played in, the butterflies would come ahead of time, right? To the point sometimes of feeling sick, I learned to deal with that over the years, but it was hard for me. It was really, really hard for me. Like I would go out and you have to show that you're confident and you have to show all these things, but inside I was always in knots the day before, the week before. I always was in knots. So, it's hard, it's hard, but I quickly learned that if I think about something too much and I don't just act, then I'm never going to do it, right? And you can practice and practice, and I did. Believe me, with sports, every single day you can practice and practice and practice. And that does help you become more prepared for when you actually go in and you're on and you're playing the game and you're, in it. And you want to perform not just for yourself, but you don't want to let anybody else down either when you're in a team sport. And like especially with me, I always knew that it started with me. If you're a pitcher and it does. It starts with you. You set the tone for the entire game. And it's a lot of pressure, and people, even my siblings, have told me and they played sports, and they told me, they said, we could never do that. We could never go out there and be kind of like involved in every single play like that and have that kind of responsibility. But for me, like, it taught me so much about life. Taught me that I can fail over and over, and then I would have that one moment in time, where everything would come together and I would excel, or I would achieve what I wanted to achieve. And that's kind of like gone and carried over into every aspect of my life, so that when I fail now, it's hard, but at the same time, I understand it's just part of the process of I have to do that to get better. If I don't do it, then I'm not going to get better. Because it's like learning a new skill every single time. When I would learn a new pitch, for example, I expected to be bad at it at first. I never expected to be perfect at something when I first started it, right? When I first started pitching, I can't tell you how many times I threw the ball over the fence. And it was a tall fence, I threw the ball, and I think it was like the first game that I pitched, I think I walked like 18 people, hit a couple people, but then I struck out. I don't even remember. I think I can remember the walks. You see how I can remember the bad stuff, but I don't remember the good stuff. I struck out like the same amount of people. so, so I mean, there were times, and again, that's all, harping on your bad things instead of remembering the good things that you've done is so common. We really want to downplay what we do when we succeed. We want to minimize, because why? We fear what other people are going to think of us, right? We want to minimize our accomplishments, but we don't have a problem putting ourselves down for things that we fail at, right? Because what does that do? It helps us feel more connected to other people, right? And that, again, makes us feel loved. So if we really get an idea of this whole idea of what we really fear deep down, we fear not being enough and we fear not being loved. And once we learn to kind of give those things to ourselves, feeling like we are enough. And how does that happen? Well, we learn to rely on our inner resources, and we do that through action and facing a fear every single time we have it. Every single time. It can be a simple thing. It could be, just, I don't know, walking upstairs instead of taking the elevator when you don't know if you could actually make it up the stairs. That's a fear for a lot of people, and they're like, well, I don't think I could make it up the stairs. But taking those steps, no pun intended, but taking those steps and getting up to the top of the stairs, right? That's a huge thing. And knowing that, okay, I can do this, and knowing something about yourself that you can achieve, that you did it on your own. Now, and again, you might only be able to make it up a couple steps. You might not even be able to make it up the whole flight of stairs, but you did it, right? You did, and okay, you still made it. You didn't die. You didn't, you confronted the fear, and you proved something to yourself. And I think the more that you do things to prove to yourself, the less you're going to need the approval of other people. You're not going to need someone to say to you, yes, you're enough, constantly. And I think so many people get into relationships, especially because they fear not being enough if they're by themselves. Because they're by themselves, then what does that mean? What does everybody else think? They think, well, I'm just not lovable. They think, that I'm not good enough for them. And this is how we get into situations just in general in our life, and we make decisions, I think, in general, that just aren't healthy for us, because we're doing it out of fear and not out of what's really right for us. And I'm not saying I haven't been victim to that too. I've definitely done it, so it's not something that I'm immune to. It's something, though, that I've learned to recognize. And I think recognition of it is the biggest thing. Things that you can do to get, because fear will paralyze you from moving forward. It'll paralyze you, and then you're going to start to feel very unfulfilled if you're not doing what it is that you really want to do, and the only thing holding you back from doing it is your fear. So if you get stuck, the only thing that's going to get you unstuck is taking a long, hard look at yourself, realizing and being truthful with yourself. What is holding me back? What is this fear that I have? Because everything that you do can come back to those two main fears of not being enough or not being loved. Everything in life can come back to that. Everything. So once you look at it, if it's public speaking, okay, I fear public speaking. Why? Because I fear what people are going to think of me. Why? Because what if they don't think nicely of me? Or what if they think I'm terrible? What does that mean? Well, that means that I'm not loved or I'm not enough. So it all comes back to that eventually anyway. So the more that you work on your internal resources, and relying on you to do things rather than relying on other people, their opinions or their, the more that you just learn that you are capable by testing yourself constantly. You just have to do it. You have to test yourself in situations and know that if you fail, then that's okay. And what does that mean about you? I mean, can it get depressing after a while if you fail when you fail? Absolutely. You can get frustrated, you can get depressed, but that's why it's important to surround yourself with other people who are trying to improve themselves too. And doing the work. I'm a big proponent of, therapy and life coaching and all of those things because it helps. It helps you to determine why you're doing things. It helps you to get unstuck and break patterns that you're in, especially life coaching. It does that. It helps you to really break patterns and recognize the patterns at first. Am I in a pattern right now, with my thoughts? And recognizing that is key, because then once you recognize it, you can do something about it. And a lot of people are afraid of doing that reflection, that internal reflection, because they're afraid of really owning up to stuff. And I learned pretty young, I would say right about the time that I had like a serious bout of anxiety and depression, that if I wanted to get better, I had to get completely honest with myself, how I felt about things, how I felt about me, thoughts that were going on in my head, and I had to learn how to express them. I had to learn how to express things and be completely, truly, totally honest about who I was as a person and if what I was doing was aligning with who I am inside. Because if you're not, that's when the anxiety, for me at least, that's when the anxiety would start. If I felt like I was in a situation that wasn't right for me, but I was doing it anyway because of some kind of I didn't want to hurt someone else's feelings or whatever it was, then that would wear on me and cause me a lot of anxiety. And I just couldn't do it. If I wasn't speaking up for myself, if I wasn't, and again, I was never the kind of person that ever, talked back, or I was not that. I was pretty much always pretty quiet, actually. I was not really loud really out there, as a child or as a young adult even. I was pretty quiet and kept to myself. I was not, I didn't have I had a lot of acquaintances, but I didn't have a lot of close friends. If I do have close friends, like now, there's just a very few, that I allow to be close with me. I'm acquaintances and friends with people, obviously, but I think that you just, over time, I'm just sort of an introverted person by nature. I really am. I'm an introverted person. And I know that about myself, so it's hard to overcome those things. But when you want something really badly and you really feel like a call to do something, you'll do what it takes to overcome those fears. So getting unstuck, first thing is to recognize what your fear is. The second thing is to do whatever it takes to overcome it and actually do the action. Work on yourself, figure out the root of it, and then confront the root of it. Be honest. Be honest. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Have integrity, have character. Those are things that really make you feel better as a person. They do. They make you feel better when you say that you're going to do something and then you actually follow up and complete it. That makes you feel better about yourself, not just other people. Your opinion doesn't, their opinion of you doesn't also just improve, but your opinion of you have to learn to trust yourself. You have to learn that when you commit to something, or when you say that you will do something, that you're going to actually follow it up with action. And the action is hard. And I always say, go by people's actions rather than what they say, because then if they're really walking it out, right? And that's how if people are really committed to what they say that they're committed to, just by looking at what they do in their daily life. So I hope this helps somebody. I hope that, you can really realize now, when you think about all your fears of things, what if I fail? What if I do this? That it's a reflection of, it's not a fear of failure. It's a fear of not being enough. It's always comes back to you. Not being enough, not being loved. So if you have those fears, then you have to learn to give that to yourself. Give yourself the feeling of being enough. Give yourself the feeling of being loved. You have to live with you every single day. That's what it comes down to. So if you are living with yourself every single day, you better like yourself. So, and do the work in order to like yourself. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you're having an awesome Monday, and hopefully, this gets you started off on the right track for the week. All right, talk to you soon.